and about the Latino youth who, some of them, not all of them, but some of them that listen to rap music particularly, and they may speak a certain way, they say certain words that they get angry about because they feel they shouldn't be saying that word because it's like racist or whatever the N word, but they drop the hard R. I guess a lot of the youth mainly does that, although I have seen people from other generations do it as well within our community. But I would say for the most part, it's definitely the youth in our community that go around acting that way, and I believe it's because they're starting to see more diversity within that culture, within the rap culture. You got like artists like Lil Pump, the other one with the I forget his name, but with the rainbow hair. Um, and there's another one. There's like a few of them that are of Latino descent. So they're starting to see more, and not just Latino, but white, more and more white rappers, and maybe even Asian. So you're starting to see like a variety of communities being represented within rap music. And if the kids are growing up here, it's like why are you so surprised that such a mainstream culture is influencing them? And it's like you can't understand why, or you're getting angry about it. It's like that's any art form that's mainstream like that and within the United States is gonna influence others, and it's definitely not just yours. Like there's people who listen to country, pop music, rock music, just because like let's say country is dominated by white people. So if somebody grows up listening to country music because they grew up here, especially in like a rural area or the South, can you blame them? What they can't listen to just because they're not white? That's basically what it sounds like when they're bitching about people of other communities listening to music that's made by mostly them. Almost like, oh, you can't listen to that because you're not black. So, what kind of shit is that? It's like they want segregation. They want to segregate everybody from their anything that has to do with them. And yet they're complaining when they feel like people are discriminating against them. That's what it looks like to me, at least. But I mean, it's like they fail to realize that these kids, these Latino kids, they grew up here. They have every right to that music. You can't try and tell them like, oh, you shouldn't be listening to that. Like, why not? They're American. The music's American. So there's like a color line to it. I didn't know that, but I don't know. Like for instance, me and my mother, we listen to oldies, and a lot of that music is sung like by both black, white, and there's even some Chicano artists like the Midnighters, the Sunglows, or Sunliners, whatever their name is, Santana War. Like, we listen to that music, and you know what? Because a great chunk of it is by black artists, we can't listen to it, despite it being mainstream. Like my mom growing up here, being born here. You see where I'm going with this? Like, I don't know. It just kind of seems like they're trying to say like everything's off limits unless you're black. They can't understand why there's kids going around acting like them, like dressed like them, or wearing their hair a certain way. Like, I can understand the N word. Like, you're not appreciating people using that word, but when it comes to everything else, I feel like that's just being a crybaby at that point. Like these kids are not fresh off the boat. They were born and raised here, so you can expect them to listen to that music if that's what's being pushed to them in the media. It's like all over TikTok. It's like kind of unavoidable.
And I really do believe if more Latino kids had more Latino people to look up to in the mainstream media, then they wouldn't have to look to others. If they would like allow more opportunities for Latinos within the mainstream American culture and entertainment media, like we wouldn't have to look to these other races who feel like we shouldn't take part in their music, or just because we're not the same ethnic background as them. It's like it's an American thing, so I don't see why not. If we speak English and we understand English, I don't see why we shouldn't be listening to music in English in the country that we grew up in. Now it's different if somebody's listening to like Japanese music, Mexican music. That's different because if you don't speak Spanish and you didn't grow up with that culture, you didn't grow up in that country. Obviously, that's going to be a little different, But it's not the same when somebody's Latino, but they grow up in the United States and they English is a primary language for them. And I don't. It's like basically a part of our culture as well. We grew up here, so it'd be different if like we didn't and we were living in another country and we were listening to that music and we don't even speak English, or you know. So it just feels like like trying to exclude people. And music's supposed to be like an inclusive thing, a universal thing, but you got some people trying to gatekeep who can listen to it, depending on your background. I find it funny. I think, if anything, you should be proud that you guys came a long way if you were able to reach other communities and not just people who look like you.
And this other person, or I think it was the same person, pointing out or trying to make the argument that, oh, it's not our fault that you guys aren't really in the media, or your youth don't see themselves in the media. If there's more of your community that's working behind the scenes, which there probably is now, you guys probably make up a good percentage. I wouldn't be surprised if people working behind the scenes in Hollywood and the music industry. Then yeah, we can go ahead and say that you guys are your community is excluding our community. If we don't really have our community working behind the scenes, obviously there's not going to be that many opportunities for Latino people trying to get into Hollywood or become musicians, and writing scripts and that center on us, and because it all starts behind the scenes. So first you got to look into who's working behind the scenes, the people doing the casting and all that. Uh, uh, from what I read, it's like even less behind the scenes. Latino people represent even less behind the scenes than the artists and the movie stars and the actors. So yeah, that's an issue. That's like a deliberate exclusion.
And you're saying it's not your community's fault for that if we're underrepresented in the media, but well, whoever behind the scenes is, they're okay with having other or certain minority demographics.
And not only choosing them much more, like it seems like 10 times over more than they choose you to be in the films or commercials, and disproportionate to their population too. Of course, we're going to look at that like, why is that so? Like, why are we being excluded despite our population having like this significant growth in the past decades? So, just like this one article I read by this Latino journalist, I believe it is a deliberate attempt to exclude us because they want to try and, put it out there that they don't view us as being like a truly American. It's like a perpetual foreigner thing where they feel like we're not watching TVs, we're not consuming anything, but you want to exclude us from everything despite us our presence here. Trying to act like we're invisible. Then one can only assume that they have an issue with us, and it is intentional, like leaving us out intentionally, because whatever their beef with us is, or racism. I believe in that same article I read that Latinos are the ones who go to the movie theaters more than other demographics in this country. So they don't even appreciate that, despite us still going actively to the movie theaters as a community and supporting the blockbuster. It's like, oh, well, we're still not going to put you behind the scenes, give you opportunities to work behind the scenes and create stories for yourself. And if you guys get to complain about racism, then so do we. That's how I see it. And I guess my final thought and my point is that the reason that our community, the youth especially, if they're looking to other races of people as to influence them, it's because they're not seeing much of their own in the media, in the American media, because maybe they don't listen to stuff in Spanish. You got to consider that while you're over there saying, "Oh, well, why don't they listen to their own culture?" You don't get that they might be bicultural, especially if they grew up here, or maybe their only culture is American, and they're not even seeing themselves in it. So yeah, very inconsiderate of you to like just assume that they're gonna like go listen to Telemundo or watch Telemundo and shit all the time just because they're not seeing themselves on MTV or whatever.
And how you're saying, oh, that's not our community's fault. That's not black people's fault that you guys aren't being seen in the media as much. Well, we can say the same thing when there's Latinos who are taking up certain jobs in this country. American citizens or not, they're taking up certain jobs, and then you want to blame us. You look to us to blame, right? You're not looking at who's providing those jobs or like the reason for the lack of jobs for everybody. You're looking at us and blaming us. So, yep, same thing.